In this video, we'll be demonstrating how we tie a common woolly worm. We use this pattern a lot on the local carp species. We use this primarily for fish that we call cruisers. They're not actively feeding on the surface, nor are they actively feeding on the bottom, but they're merely swimming by slowly at a depth under the water. You want this fly to be a relatively neutrally buoyant fly, and so we tie it in a variety of styles. We tie it either unweighted, so it doesn't sink very fast at all and stays near the surface, or we tie it in weighted versions and at different weights so it'll sink a little bit more quickly, get down to a little bit deeper depth. The fly is basically the same. The only difference is the weight that we use on the fly to accomplish a different depth. We generally tie these on Mustad C71S-SS hooks, which are a stainless steel circle hook. We believe in using circle hooks which have the barbs bent down on them for all species of fish. To begin tying this fly, we anchor our thread at the bend of the hook, and then I take a piece of red floss, which I've folded over several times, and secure that at the bend of the hook to make a very short tail. This will provide just a very small tail, small splash of color. Once it's secure, cut off the excess in front, and then the loops in the back, cut them open, and this provides just again, a small flash of color on the back of this hook. For the second step, we take a piece of chenille. Generally we use olive chenille, although you could vary the color as you needed. And I take that chenille and I expose the two little core threads and use that as my point at which to anchor this chenille and leave it hanging out, again, the back end of this hook. In the next step, we add our hackle. In this case, I'm using a grizzle hackle. We tie it in by the tip, again securing it nice and secure. If there's any excess in front, you can cut that off if you need to. And then work your thread forward on the shank of the hook until it's about one eye width back from the eye of the hook. At this point, because I'm using a rotating vise, I anchor my thread. If you're not using rotating vise, you don't need to do that. And then it's just simply a matter of working the chenille forward until you get to that one eye width back from the eye of the hook, and use your thread to secure that chenille. 2 or 3 wraps will secure it in place. And then palmer the hackle through those wraps of the chenille, coming forward and again stopping at about that one eye width back from the eye of the hook. At this point, it's just a matter of securing the hackle. Again, 2 or 3 wraps will do that. Cut off the excess. Form a small head with the tying thread. Whip finish. And you have your completed fly. We like for this fly to fish as a relatively neutrally buoyant fly, and so depending on the hook and the materials you use, you may need to adjust the buoyancy slightly. One way to do that is by adding a lead-free wire to the shank of the hook prior to tying the fly. How much wire you add depends on the hook's materials and how fast you need this to sink or slow you need it to sink. Generally, an unweighted fly is perfect for the conditions we have around here, but there are a few times when we need to add a little bit of weight. If you wrap that lead-free wire around the shank of the hook, I like to palmer my thread through that wire just to keep it kind of snug and in place. And then at that point, it's merely a matter of tying it exactly like the other fly by adding your floss at the back end. Again, cutting off the excess, cutting the loops open. And from there on out, it's the same as tying the rest of the fly. Chenille, hackle, you're finished. as a completed fly. About the only thing I do different when tying it as a weighted fly versus an unweighted fly is that I use black thread for my material rather than a lighter colored thread. For me, black thread indicates that it's a weighted fly. You could use a variety of colors of thread if you like to indicate different weights of fly. That way it makes them a little easier to find in your fly box, knowing what weight they are.